Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today because we have some very exciting General Hospital news to talk about, and it's definitely worth the wait. There are moments in Port Charles when the truth does not arrive like a storm. It comes quietly, almost gently, and that is what makes it so frightening. This may be one of those moments. Willow appears to be standing at the edge of a confession that could change everything, not only for Drew, but for Nina, for the children, and for the fragile little world she has been trying to hold together with lies, fear, and desperation. The image of Nina standing in that living room, looking at Drew in his wheelchair, carries a sadness that feels heavy before a single full explanation is even given. She is not simply looking at an injured man, she is looking at the wreckage of choices she does not yet understand, while Willow, somewhere just behind her, seems ready to tear open a secret too terrible to keep hidden any longer. What makes this possible confession so gripping is that it does not sound like the truth of an accident or a medical tragedy. It sounds like the truth of intention. If Willow admits that Drew did not suffer a stroke, then she is not only correcting a false story. She is exposing an act of control so cold and so calculated that it changes the meaning of Drew's entire condition. A stroke would have made him a victim of fate. This truth would make him the victim of someone inside his own home, someone who once claimed to love him, someone who now may have decided that silence and helplessness were more useful than freedom. That is what gives the scene such emotional force. It is not only about what happened to Drew's body, it is about the collapse of trust inside the very room where he should have been safest. Willow's motives make the situation even more painful because they are tangled in maternal fear, humiliation, and wounded pride. In her mind, Drew had become more than a personal enemy. He had become an obstacle standing between her and her children, between her and the life she believed she deserved to reclaim. The scandals around him, his reckless behavior, and the damage he brought into her world may have convinced her that he would ruin every chance she had of regaining control over Wiley and Amelia. That kind of fear can grow into something dark when it is fed every day by anger and panic. Willow may have reached a point where she no longer saw Drew as a man, but as a threat that had to be managed. That does not make her actions right. It only makes them tragically human. She may have told herself she was fighting for her future, while slowly becoming someone she would once have feared. The involvement of Jen Sidwell makes the story even darker, because it turns Willow's private desperation into part of a larger and more dangerous game. A frightened woman making a terrible choice is one kind of tragedy. A powerful man stepping in, recognizing that fear, and turning it into an arrangement that benefits him is something far more chilling. Sidwell did not simply become aware of what Willow had done. He seems to have seen opportunity in it. By giving her the drug and helping maintain Drew's condition, he did more than protect her secret. He created a system in which Drew could be reduced to a living shell while still remaining useful as a political symbol. That kind of manipulation is horrifying because it strips away the last bit of humanity from the situation. Drew becomes not just a victim, but a tool. Willow becomes not just guilty, but trapped in a bargain that may now be impossible to escape. What is especially tragic is the image of Drew himself, trapped inside his own body, unable to speak, unable to walk, unable to tell anyone what was done to him. That kind of suffering creates a very particular kind of heartbreak. He is present but powerless. He is near the people around him, but separated from them by a wall no one can see. If he understands everything, if he hears Willow's voice, if he sees Nina's horror, then his silence becomes even more devastating. He would be forced to witness the unraveling of his own life without any way to stop it. For an older audience especially, that fear hits deeply. It touches the vulnerability of illness, dependence, and betrayal all at once. Drew's condition is not only a plot twist, it is a nightmare built from helplessness. Nina's role in this moment could become one of the most emotional parts of the story. A mother hearing that her daughter has done something monstrous is one kind of shock. A mother realizing that the daughter she tried to protect has crossed a line so severe that there may be no easy path back is something even more painful. Nina's stunned reaction suggests more than surprise. It suggests the beginning of a moral crisis. She may feel torn between wanting to shield Willow and wanting justice for Drew. She may look at Willow and still see the wounded daughter who has struggled for love, approval, and stability. But she may also begin to see a woman who has made decisions so dangerous that innocent lives, especially the children's, now stand on very unstable ground. That emotional split is where the real drama lives. Nina is not just hearing bad news. She may be watching her daughter transform into someone she can barely recognize. The daily drugging of Drew adds another layer of dread because it means this is not a single terrible act buried in the past. It is an ongoing choice. Every day that Willow continues, she is renewing the crime. Every dose becomes a fresh act of control, a fresh decision to keep him weak, silent, and dependent. That is what makes the story so unnerving. It is not about one moment of rage alone. It is about maintenance, routine, and the frightening calm that can settle over a person who has justified the unjustifiable. Willow may have begun this out of panic, but continuing it requires a colder kind of thinking. She has to wake up each day and choose deception again. That repetition makes her situation more disturbing and also more tragic, because with every passing day, she moves farther away from innocence and closer to becoming a prisoner of her own secret. If this confession truly happens, it may mark the moment when Willow can no longer carry the weight of what she has done. Secrets like this do not stay hidden without leaving scars. They poison every room, every glance, every act of care. The living room scene already feels like a breaking point, as if the walls themselves can no longer hold the lie together. Willow may confess because she is afraid. She may confess because guilt is finally tearing through her defenses, or she may confess because she senses that the truth is about to come out anyway, and she would rather speak it herself than lose control one final time. No matter the reason, the result could be devastating. Nina's world may crack open. Drew's suffering may finally be named for what it is. And Willow, after fighting so hard to protect her future, may discover that the very choices she made to keep her children close are the ones most likely to take everything away. There is something especially chilling about a secret that cannot survive on its own and must be fed every single day. That is the position Willow may now be in with Drew. It is no longer only about the shooting or the first terrible decision that left him trapped inside his own body. It is about the routine that came after, the quiet cruelty of keeping him there, and the fear that begins to rise the moment Willow realizes she cannot be in Port Charles every hour of every day. A secret like this becomes harder to manage the moment real life interrupts it. Travel, work, sudden trips, and political obligations can all create dangerous cracks in the control she has fought so hard to maintain. The more complicated her life becomes, the more likely it is that the nightmare around Drew will begin to slip out of her hands. That is why Nina may soon find herself pulled into the darkest corner of her daughter's life. If Willow confesses everything, Nina will not simply be hearing about a crime from the past. She will be hearing about an ongoing act that still needs to be hidden. That changes the emotional weight of the moment. Nina may be horrified to learn that Willow shot Drew, but the true shock may come when she understands that Drew's current condition is not permanent damage from a natural medical event. It is something being actively maintained. The burden of that truth is enormous. Nina would have to face the fact that her daughter is not asking for sympathy or comfort. She may be asking for help. She may be asking her mother to become part of something unforgivable. That request could tear Nina apart from the inside. Nina has made many mistakes, and she has often acted out of fear, anger, and maternal instinct, but she is not empty inside. She does not move through the world without guilt. She does not look at suffering and feel nothing. That is what makes this possible turn so heartbreaking. If she agrees to help Willow, it would not come from cruelty. It would come from panic and from the desperate belief that a mother must protect her child even when that child has become dangerous. Nina may tell herself that she has no choice. She may convince herself that helping Willow is the only way to prevent a greater disaster. But once she stands near Drew, sees his silence, sees the helplessness in his eyes, and understands that he knows exactly who did this to him, the weight of that choice could become unbearable. The emotional difference between Willow and Nina is what makes this situation so powerful. Willow appears to have crossed into a place where control matters more than conscience. She has already justified the shooting, justified the drugging, and justified the daily maintenance of Drew's condition. She may believe she is fighting for her future, for her children, and for the life she feels was stolen from her. Nina, however, still feels the sting of right and wrong. She may lie, she may cover up, she may do terrible things in a desperate moment, but she is still vulnerable to remorse. That means every time she touches the medicine, every time she looks at Drew, every time she hears silence where there should be words, she may begin to unravel. Willow may see the plan as practical. Nina may experience it as a slow spiritual collapse. That is why the question of whether Nina could forget a dose becomes so important. It may not even happen because she is careless. It could happen because she is emotionally shaken, because she hesitates, because she freezes at the last moment while looking at the man her daughter has turned into a prisoner. One missed dose could become the first real break in Willow's control. If Drew begins to regain even a little strength, if his voice starts to return, if he can signal for help, then everything could change in an instant. The truth would no longer belong only to Willow and the people she manipulates. It would begin fighting its way out through Drew himself. That possibility creates a deep and painful suspense, because the audience would know that hope for Drew could come not from justice or courage at first, but from one small human mistake made by a woman drowning in guilt. There is also the terrifying possibility that Nina could make the opposite mistake. A woman unfamiliar with a dangerous drug, terrified of doing the wrong thing, may panic and do too much. In trying to protect Willow, she could accidentally push Drew into something even worse. That would create a different kind of tragedy, because then Nina would not simply be covering up a crime, she would be directly responsible for a new disaster. The horror of that possibility is especially strong because it feels so believable. Nina is not a trained handler. She is not cold and methodical. She is emotional, shaken, and vulnerable to fear. A person like that can make terrible errors under pressure. One trembling hand, one misunderstanding, one desperate attempt to follow Willow's instructions could turn an already monstrous situation into a complete catastrophe.